Hail! Thrand here, and I'm here with a very exciting review of an upcoming video game. I'm sure everyone's seen the actual trailer that's come out recently. My best friend Marquez, who is a viewer, and he's also been on our channel many times, and I do historical reenactment with him, sent me the trailer immediately. He loves games like WoW, World of Warcraft, and he loves games like this, especially when they have such an exciting and dramatic trailer. He sent it to me immediately. I saw it. I didn't get a chance to do a review on it because I was working on a couple other projects. One for Roland Vorzeka that I did with him when I was up at Historical Viking Martial Arts. One that I was doing as a fun exchange with Matt Easton. I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen that out there with the lockdown challenge. But the first thing I did is I noticed most people, even Shad, I've seen his review or parts of his review, states that he's not sure of the time period. He was thinking the time period was set pre-William the Conqueror, or 1066, the Battle of Hastings, before it was influenced by the Normans. He was pretty sure of that, but he wasn't positive, which, I mean, I could see how you could be confused after seeing the trailer originally. But I want to find out for sure. So how am I going to find out the premise to it? We looked it up on Wikipedia, and apparently they have enough information that we know the main character's name is going to be Ivar, and I'm sure they're going to say Ivar. It could be Ivar, some people would say Ivar, and actually the real Old Norse pronunciation probably might be something more like Ivar, or something like that. But we read the article, Kati and I looked it up, and it's on Wikipedia. I shall put a link down below so y'all can look at it as well. It's set in 873. Now remember, the rate of Linden's farm was 793, so this is well after they were considered a main threat to all of England, the Vikings. They had started writing all the propaganda about how they were hitting convents and churches and all holy areas and robbing them of their gold and silver and precious religious artifacts. So yeah, that's a good time period to start off. That's a heyday of the Viking. I like that. That's very, very good. It looks like the way they work the Brotherhood of Assassins in are, of course, your main character is he's going to be representing them. That represents the Vikings or the Scandinavian people. We're not sure if they're set in Denmark or what areas, Sweden. I have no idea, Norway. But anyway, probably more of an area like Denmark where they have easy access to head straight off to England, of course, and Anglo-Saxon England. But it looks like the main protagonist, as it was before, is the Order of the Templars, or the Knights Templar. The problem with the Templar being the main threat in 793 is the Order of the Knights Templar did not really farm at that time period. It was around the 12th century. What was it again, Kati?
1119.
1119. Whoa, that is a long time if you look at how many hundred years later that is to the actual plot. Now, unless they've worked it in some esoteric way where there's a secret order of the Templar that existed way before that, and Christianity was way more prominent, you know, early period than had it taken over, and they'd traveled to the Middle East and everything and set it up, or somehow it had taken place early. I have no clue, but that would be a major flaw if we're going for historical accuracy right there. And we know this is an exciting game. It's not supposed to be totally historically accurate, but other flaws I see in the write-up immediately, you can dual wield everything. That's great. I don't have a problem with that. There are berserkers in the old sagas, and they dual wield. You know, they might have a sword in one hand and an axe in the other, and they're ready to fight and go to battle. I can see this, and yes, that makes total sense. Using the shield, I can see all the great shield combat, and I'm very excited about that. Something I don't really see is great swords and flails. Yes, that's right, you heard me correctly. Dual wielding and great swords and flails, or flails and great swords. No, they did not normally use flails, especially of this type, like they probably think the Templars would use as later century knights, maybe. But this is like a German horseman's flail. I could see stuff like that in the game, and somebody riding by and hitting somebody. Usually they would have longer handles than this if you did use them. And there's a lot of historical, I guess, controversy where they're even used very often or just in depictions and drawings, because they are quite dangerous to the wielder, even if you do have a longer handle. But flails and great swords, and I have here the famous Gallogly. This thing didn't come about to around the 14th, 15th century, and yeah, for anything this size, a great sword, and dual wielding them. I don't know if they mean dual wielding these two weapons, which I think would be ridiculous. I mean, I'd probably want it this way if I was going to try to do it, but still, They may just mean use your great sword and use a flail. But the thing I'm seeing with this whole situation, none of this stuff existed in 873. I'm sorry, the 9th century, they were lucky if they had a Dane axe or a great axe. So yeah, I don't know what these guys were thinking, but I guess for mechanics and the game and fun, but flails at that time period, as far as I know, weren't that common or that popular. They could make one, it's possible, but I doubt you would have one. And a great sword for sure. Any type of long sword or hand and a half sword didn't come about till the 12th or 13th centuries. So that's a long time after what we're looking at here. So they're saying that's going to be in it. That's another major discrepancy. I did notice in the trailer, which we'll bring that up later, that they have Dane axes or great axes. And honestly, those weren't that common at that time period either. But the other thing it talked about, and I'll tell you something that I find exciting and entertaining, and I might want to see how the mechanics work. I don't know how they're going to work it out. Is they're going to have fleeting or flitting in it, which is basically the old practice of two early Scandinavian warriors, or gentlemen, I guess, freemen, bondi, or what have you, having a put-down competition, basically a cut-down competition, and boasting. And it's done in a very poetic style, so it'd be called poetry back then, but nowadays we would know rhyming and putting each other down as a rap battle. So somehow they're gonna have a Viking rap battle. I'm very excited about that. I'm sorry, that sounds cool. I might even enjoy that. This is a first-person adventure game, and you do play Ivar. I'm sure they'll probably call him Ivar, the way they'll pronounce it. And you can be a female as well, I believe, from one of the write-ups said. It looks very good, looks very entertaining. They're going to bring back a lot of the old aspects and Eagle Eye and stuff like that. So yeah, I have played a little old Assassin's Creed, and they're going to have the Assassin's Blade in it, I'm sure, and some trinkets. So that should be really good. We see that in the trailer. But what I say is, before we go any further, that's enough about that article. You can read down below to get more information that I got, if it's correct, from Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is regularly correct somewhat. We'll start watching that trailer now, and every time I see something that's inaccurate or something that I like or think is good, we'll stop and talk about it a second, and we'll go through that trailer real quick. Let's get going.
They are heartless. Godless barbarians.
Very interesting how they start off during winter in Scandinavia. You see everyone moving around in regular garb and clothing, and yes, they look a lot like I do, other than I see some furs and stuff they might not have. On the first statement, godless barbarians. Well, the only thing I see a problem with this is they were heathen or pagan people, and they had a whole pantheon of gods. They had more gods than any of Christianity. So calling them godless, I mean, that's because I guess they don't consider their gods credible. I could see that the Christians would say this at the time period, but it's kind of a fallacy right there. Then they also show the priestess, which yes, the Vikings had priestess, and no, it's not impossible for someone to have horns on something if it was ceremonial. How common that would be, I have no clue. It's just not impossible ceremonially. It would not have a horned helmet or anything with horns in combat. But we notice she's got blood on her hand, and you see the big statue. It looks like of Odin or one of the old gods. To me, I would say it's probably like Odin or one of the old gods like Thor or Tyr in the background. And then you see her put the blood on his face. Yes, blood was used to hallow things. It was a blot, or it wasn't drinking at that period. A blot or a blood was blood. That's exactly what it meant. You would sacrifice an animal, you collected the blood. They usually collected it in a certain way. A lot of times the animal was cooked afterwards. It wasn't just thrown away. They didn't waste anything. It was considered a sacred animal. The blood was kept. The animal was then cooked. Some of the food would be given to the gods as a sacrifice to the gods, and some of the food would be consumed by people that were at the ritual. But they would take usually an evergreen sprig, as what we understand, and they would anoint people and things with the blood to hallow them before they went off to battle or combat, or to protect them from what have you, any kind of plague by the terrorists or the giants or anything. Let's go on and watch more of the trailer. So far I didn't see much wrong with the clothing. It looks like it's winter time. We see the mountain, see the god statue. Very much reminding me of a TV program.
They murder and kill blindly.
All right, that was very interesting. We see them go out to the fjord, which looked proper, looked appropriate, and they sail off. They show up to the sunny, bright green shores of England, which the land's supposed to be fertile. I can see them try to show the disparity, but honestly, Scandinavia had come out of a mini ice age and had a lot of warming during that time period, so they overpopulated. There were a lot of Scandinavians all over Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. So one of the reasons they started branching out like they did and going so many places and trying to find new land, trying to be merchants and trade, and even go raiding and make war to get plunder, is because they had ran out of land. Everyone owned the land, and there was so much people on all the land that if you wanted a piece of land to get a wife and marry someone and set up your own homestead, you pretty much needed a lot of money or cattle or something to trade to get such property. To do that, you needed wealth. So we see how green and fertile it is there, and that's supposedly one of the reasons the Scandinavians wanted to go there. No, they didn't want to go there because it was so much better at farmland. They had good farmland where they came from. They wanted to go there because it was new land that people weren't using. There was a lot of peasants there, a lot of open area that the kings and the barons and so on, the land barons, claimed, but no one was on it. So a lot of times they would come there, set up little homesteads and so on, and then get attacked because it was the king's land. I mean, it was owned, the kings there owned it. The kings of old Anglo-Saxon England owned them, and they weren't going to let you just come and set up your own little settlement. They saw it as a threat, and you were taking their property whether they were using it or not. So, I mean, that's just the way most countries are. You claim your territory, but that caused a lot of conflict. We see in the show, they're showing up for a raid. But one thing I noticed on the ships, it looks like they're wearing a lot of leather and hides, like bear skins and stuff like that. I guess the bear skin berserkers and stuff. I'm sure everyone else is probably going to say the same thing. They did not wear a lot of furs like that. I mean, everybody wears furs during the winter to stay warm, but you don't just run around wearing furs as a statement just because it's the 9th century. And a leather armor like that wasn't that common. Bringing up leather in the videos, yeah, I've tested leather before, and I know that very thick sole bin style leathers can stop like 70-pound bows with razor heads and stuff like that, because I have tested it. So it's not totally useless. We just have no evidence of them ever using it. A big wide belt like this, like they always show Vikings wearing, they usually wear really thin belts like I'm wearing, if not thinner, maybe 1 inch wide, just something to hold whatever they were carrying on them. So no, you don't normally see belts like this. You see them in reenactment because it helps protect the kidneys and helps support the body and act kind of like armor modernly. Well, but the Laplanders lived right near the Viking or the Viking peoples, and they traded with them. So they maybe could have got influenced. You might see a belt like this if they were dressing like the Laplanders and they had a big wide belt with a couple of buckles. Not impossible, but very unlikely. So we're talking about leathers they might be wearing. Bracers, these are Bosibons. They got the idea from dealing with the Middle Easterners, so we have known that some Varangian Guard and some of the Vikings and stuff that were mercenaries and hired out might have had Bosibons. These are just hard leather, so yeah, they might help you to protect your arm, and it covers your elbow as well, all in one unit without articulation. That is plausible, but I mean, there's no great evidence that they had those in the Viking Age either, but we don't see any of these in the video. And what we do have from the migrational era, we have splinted arms where they were either held on by straps or perhaps some leather like this and padding, but you have braces down the arm to protect the arm if it's to be cut at. We have found these late century in the latrine, but not during the Viking era. These here we do have remains from the migrational age, which predates the Viking era, where they use splints on possibly their shins and their forearm to protect their arms and their legs. So something like that might be plausible, but I don't see that in the actual video. And the other thing, like I said, this is an aventail here, and I want to make sure I put that in here. That could be hung from a helmet. There's no evidence of them wearing coifs, you know, at that early period underneath the helm, but mail hung from the helm and around the helm was plausible. And as you see, this is kind of like a mantle or a aventail type thing that could be draped. You could drape mail or maybe some leather draping or what have you, cloth around your helmet to help protect your head if it happened to come in, might turn it. If you were a weaker man, like a Jarl or Konungur or a warrior, you know, of the time, you would have mail armor. This is what was standardly worn. If you can see what I'm wearing here, this is mail armor. It covers me fully. It could come all the way down to the wrist. It usually didn't. These are 3/4 sleeves. It could come all the way down to the knee. Mine's a little short. It doesn't come to the knee, but it's possible to have a full björni or björnia of riveted rings. These are all riveted. This is like historical mail. It's not bright and shiny. And then stamped rings. So this is very durable, even on multiple layers of just a few tunics or something like you might be wearing from Scandinavia, an under tunic and an outer tunic and whatever layers of clothing you're wearing. It would still be very effective without a gambeson or multiple layers of cloth or padding or anything. Although you could wear something like that under there, especially if it's cooler in the climate, it would certainly help disperse blows through the mail and even stop piercing and cutting if it was, of course you can't cut through this stuff, it's not going to happen. But anyway, they would have had mail armor like I'm wearing, some people call it chainmail, and most likely most people, they couldn't afford anything else unless they could only afford weapons and a shield, which they definitely all would have shields, like my large round here. They would have a hjelmer. We do have the Gurmumbo helm, which is one that was found in Scandinavia, but we do find helms all over the place, so there were helms available. So even if it was just a leather helm or some kind of a really thick fur hat with, you know, on the inside and leather on the outside, they'd have some kind of hat on maybe to help protect their head while they're raiding. So what I'm seeing is not very realistic armor, but maybe we can forgive that. It looks like they're trying to copy the haircuts and stuff, like Ragnar Lothbrok from the TV series Vikings. Most people know that one. We did a review of that not long ago on the History Channel. They're doing that, but also during the raid, what we see that I find very interesting and I like, it may only be because it is Ivar, the character, and you have some kind of honor or you won't hurt women and children, but we see him let a woman and child past. Like he didn't harm them, he didn't attack them. But if you were not an outlaw in old Scandinavia, if you were not outlawed, that means you didn't break the Scandinavian laws, and they did not normally commit rapes. They were not allowed to rape people, so the idea of them going in and raping women, usually it was rapine they were talking about, and that's misinterpretation of the word. Rapine means to displace, to go take something from somewhere that's not yours and take it somewhere else, or even the population, because you could go take people as servants, thralls, so on. But in this, we see him letting them go and not attacking them and just letting them pass. So it is plausible this could have happened back in the day as well. If they weren't a threat to them, they normally did not attack peasants, they didn't attack any kind of servants, and they didn't attack women and children, and they didn't attack merchant ships, because that's just plain piracy, and those were still outlawed in Scandinavia. Most all their laws were against these things. If you got caught or convicted of doing these things, and you were known to have done them, or people reported that you did them, and you were anybody in Scandinavia, then you could be outlawed from your own country. No one would want to be outlawed. I mean, well, the Rus, they got outlawed. Most of the people who went to Russia got outlawed, so, and started trading with the Middle East. But that's another story. But anyway, let's go on.
They scour the lands of England, lands they will never defend, never love. The time has come to speak to them in a language they will understand.
Oh, somebody tell me. Answer if you can. Oh, somebody tell me.
Okay, they come to a land they would never love. Putting up a statue, it looks like the Allfather in the background. The Vikings are in this nice fertile green area and have taken over the village or wherever they have raided. They're playing with the children, and the first thing you notice on the arm of our Viking, he's not using a center grip shield. This is based on an actual find, or actual shields found on the Gokstad ship, and it's uber thin, super thin. The actual middle is only about 5 millimeters thick or 4 millimeters thick, and it gets even thinner at the edge, but this is super durable, super strong, and you could catch blades in it. First thing I noticed wrong about the shield, it looks like it has some kind of metal rimming to it. It has a center boss, but he has it strapped on his arm. Now, even though these shields are very durable, sometimes they get pierced slightly by, let's say, a spear, a thrown spear that would be, and an arrow from a powerful bow. And yes, they had bows up to 100 pounds or over during the Viking Age, longbows. They weren't quite the later century English longbows that go to 160 pounds or 140 pounds, but who's to say somebody didn't have one? So generally to accept arrows and stuff, you would put the shield out or hold it up, and then what would happen is it wouldn't hit you. That's what this metal thing was in the center. This could be very thick or very thin. It depended on who made them. Generally, they were fairly thick so they could stop arrows and protect the hand from incoming blows. The shield was not only fought with like this, and it moved like a door. That's why one of the kinnings for it was the door of Odin. So the first thing I see there is the shield that he's using to play with the children is strapped to his arm. It's domed. The Vikings did not have shields that were domed. They did have shields during the time period, but they were more in the migrational age still. Kind of like I have the migrational sword here, idea that it's a Viking sword, but they still like the same designs, the Viking swords, the way they looked. And this is a pattern welded blade. It's very beautiful. Not exactly accurate to one from the period, but very close. It's pattern welded. You have the snake pattern down the blade. The whole thing is a beautiful blade design. I love the Viking age swords. It's one of my favorites. The swords in the video, they don't look too bad. Not 100% accurate, but the shields are definitely not accurate things because they would be flat. They'd be large round shields, as light as they can make them, but as strong as they can make them, covered in rawhides that were adhered back and front and rimmed. Now, is it possible for some of the shields to have been made lighter and just rimmed? Yes, but they wouldn't be rimmed with metal. The shield looked, like I said, something like you would see from the Frankish, because the Frankish did have some dome shields that were slightly smaller, but they were not strapped to the arm. They were held by a center grip. A little bit of a different shield fighting style. We also see that they're going on another raid. I guess they're going to another part of England or the British Isles there. And all those different provinces like Wessex and Sussex and Northumbria. I don't know where they're going. It's not stating, it's just a video, but they're going to attack. And you see the rain of arrows, and yes, fire arrows were used, and they would be used to set the ships on fire and to burn riggings and to burn the mast and the sails and to set stuff on fire and just cause general disarray. But as you notice, they're all putting their shields up, strapped on, and it would probably be something more like this, or hiding down behind a shield and holding it out in front of you instead of, you can see how much area this covers than the way they actually used them. But anyway, we'll go on from that. They're jumping onto the soil.
Yes, I like that. He threw that axe, hit the guy directly in the head, and killed him. I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that's possible. But let's talk about the axes and the spear for a minute in the video, and some of the features of them that I noticed in this.
Well, we have the axe throw towards the end there, which I very much dearly loved. Yeah, I think it's possible if somebody wasn't wearing a helmet, but my other thing is most people would have been wearing good helms, if nothing else, if they couldn't afford very good anything else except maybe a leather jerkin or some padding, you know, which I think most of the people who are actually the king's men or the baron's men and attacking the Vikings would have had good armor. I really do think a lot of them would have them if they were professional soldiers, because they weren't peasants. They were actually people that he employed to be warriors. Now, there's no evidence that everyone had armor at that time period. There could have been Vikings running around just wearing several layers of tunics, and like I said, maybe a helmet. But anyway, the axe hit to the head, if it was an unarmored head, yes, yeah, I think you could kill somebody with it. And one of the only documented things we see thrown in a saga is an axe to the foot, believe it or not. It was a duel, and he threw it to the foot in surprise of the guy, hitting the guy in the foot, wounding his foot, and then killing him with his sword. So yeah, axes were thrown. So I mean, people could say that's not very common. No, you wouldn't commonly see a throw like that in a kill, but you might see a bunch of axes in a volley or something thrown. The smaller hand style axes or one-handed axes like you see back here that I stuck in the target dead center. And the spear throw, which yes, I experimented with that a little bit. I threw this giant spear. But if you look at the back, we see something that we're seeing in the video. This butt cap, this butt spike, and they have it on the back of the axes, like the great axe, and on the great axe it has one on the back of it, And the thing with that, we don't know how common these butt caps were on axes. It's probably more common to see it on an axe during the Viking Age, but this would be a very early period, so you wouldn't see axes with long handles not used with shields normally. So seeing that Dane axe is out of place for sure. The head looks extremely heavy and big, and I'm noticing these knobs and hammers on the back. And one of the things I want to bring up about that is on the back of the spears, no, normally there were no butt spikes or serrator or anything on the back of spears in the Viking Age. You just didn't see it. This wasn't common. Maybe on the back of an axe handle later centuries, some of the Dane axes to stick in the ground, but even then, if you're fighting with an axe that's two-handed, you're swinging it around and using it like you have to use it, and much like a polearm, really. You might use the back to hit with, but you could just use the wood, because most people had uncovered faces anyhow. A blow from this to the jaw, the face, or the eye or something, the eye socket, this is going to do enough damage without even having metal behind it to severely offset him and be able to finish him with the axe head afterwards. Let's talk about actual axes with hammers on the back. And we have one here that actually is from Novgorod, Russia. It could have been a Varangian guard members and most likely a Scandinavian's axe. This is from a bog. This is the real axe with the patina from getting it out of the bog. It was mounted by Ulf Hrafnsson and sent to me. I've done some testing with it, and I've had a replica of it and was actually able, with the replica, since this is a very small profile axe, it doesn't look big at all, but it is quite thick in the center, to cut into a helmet. So if most people watch my channel, they know an unprotected head is certain death, but you can see the shape of this axe, not the specific one, but the replica stuck into the helmet and went deep enough that it actually would have killed the man wearing it. This is a later century transition helm, not from the Viking Age, so you wouldn't see full face covering like this normally. It wasn't impossible to have an ocular or maybe a nasal, but as far as we know, other than hanging some mail, like a mantle around the actual helmet, which I have over here, they probably would not have had any real face protection. But this does have a hammer on the back, and sometimes you see that in the very long handle, so it works well with a shield. So you can reach out far enough from behind the shield with it fully extended and still hit someone. But the hammer was kind of a tool, but it could also be used if you didn't want to waste your axe head and just wanted the impact. So anyhow, they didn't have these big old gaudy hammers or knobs or spikes or anything like we might see in the video, and they normally did not have any kind of serrator or butt caps on their spears. And the weapons to me look very grandioso and quite heavy compared to they should be. Other than that, the exchange with the thrown spear, they did throw spears. I noticed it goes straight through the man's armor. It is possible to pierce mail somewhat, even with if you use that big a spear like I have behind me that's normally used two-handed, and not even with a shield possibly. Throwing it up close, yeah, you could probably pierce the mail and injure someone. As to go clean through and out the backside, probably not. I don't know if the force would be so great it would take him off his feet in the air. But these are all dramatics that we see, even with firearms. When they don't make people fly through the air, they have them yanked off their feet by a cable, squibs blown on their chest, and then fly in movies to make it more entertaining, when in reality the guy would get hit. You might not even see he was hit, and he would just fall over and be bleeding and bleed out. So, but anyway, it's very dramatic. I love that scene. I love the axe throw when he panics and sees his brother at arms go down, his shield brother, and he throws the axe and hits the head. Very dramatic, very much good.
It's with us!
axes. Who doesn't want to do that? There's not a lot of evidence in the sagas that speaks anything of dual-wielding axes, but I'm willing to go with it. I liked it. They have armor-piercing capability, especially, like I said, if you have lower-profile heads, so I probably wouldn't have a big, broad one like Ragnar Lothbrok. But I figured I would hold this axe up to say I think that's where they got a lot of their influence, especially the way our Ivor character looks is like a Ragnar Lothbrok. But in this scene, it reveals a lot. It's actually really entertaining. I'm assuming the man with the great sword, because that is a great sword that he's wielding, which they didn't have at the period, and he looks like a Goliath-style character. He is bigger than life. He's huge. Is one of the Templars. He's got to be from the Order of the Templars. So you see this, and then immediately go, whoa, epic battle. But before that, I like the lone figure by the tree. That brings a tear to the eye. I love it. You see the character, I mean, looks like he's probably from the Brotherhood of Assassins or something. There's something about that clothing. But he says, Odin is with us, and it looks like Odin standing by the tree, and you see the raven, the Hrothgar, fly over. And then you know it's getting real because there's so many of his people dying, but he's the last one, and this epic warrior comes against him, sort of like David and Goliath, and he's dual-wielding the axes. He grabs the sword on the battlefield and drives it through the leg. But we look at this armor, and the armor actually works. That's something I have to give them credit for. They have him hitting this huge warrior other than stabbing him in the leg, which I think that through the leg would have severely hindered him with a Viking Age sword, if you see how broad the blades are. But he's wearing bronze armor. This is bronze scale armor. Now, some people want to try to believe that the Viking Age people were still wearing scale armor, but they weren't. The armor that they had was lamellar or lamellay. What it is, it's laced together platelets, and the laced together platelets came from the Byzantine style armor. If you go to the Middle East, and they had gone to the Russian area and became the Rus, a lot of the Vikings. You've got the outlaws and stuff going there, the traders and merchants going through there to go to Istanbul or what's the other place, Constantinople? Yeah, and trade. So you've got this trade route going there. So yes, some people could have possibly, but I don't know how you would do this in England, end up with scale armor. I'm assuming that he's supposed to be some ancient warrior far east that's part of the Templars is what I'm assuming. But he has a big plume like a Roman soldier, yet the front of his helm has an ocular, and it looks like the Geirmundbo helm, which is a Viking Age helm, and it looks like it's all of bronze. Does it not, Kati? It looks like a bronze helmet. Bronze Age helmet with Viking Age features and mail hanging around it. Ooh. See what Odin thinks about it. But anyhow, it was an epic fight. I very much enjoyed it, and that's how they reveal that character there that looks very much like Ragnar Lothbrok, dual-wielding two axes on doing it epically, which I liked. I did appreciate that. That was pretty cool, even though I don't think that would be a common weapon combination. You might have an axe and a spear, a sword and a spear, an axe and a sword maybe, because if you have a long enough sword axe handle, you can kind of use it to parry with if you need and still use the sword. It's plausible. Some berserkers supposedly did that in sagas. So I like that. They're making him very much look like a berserker or some kind of trained assassin or secret warrior, special warrior, what have you. And yeah, excellent scene, but the blade comes out, the assassin's blade, and you can see the look on the king's face. You don't know which king this is supposed to be at the time period, but you can see the blade when it goes in his eye and he takes him out with that blade that he's, well, I think it was actually left-handed, is part of the Assassin's Brotherhood. So that was epic. And I see what they're doing here. I see what they're going with, and I like it to a degree. I just don't understand how the Templars come into it. Certainly the Christians were around. Charlemagne, prior to all the, like the raid on Lindisfarne at 793, we actually have him make all the heathens kill on sight pretty much. If you're a heathen or a pagan and you show up as a merchant or just to hang out and as to gain port or what have you, no one's allowed to aid you, at least they be put to death. Also, anybody who doesn't attack you is an enemy of the crown pretty much and of the church. They were supposed to actually refuse to give you any aid. They couldn't trade with you or anything. They couldn't treat you as a merchant if you showed up. So this angered a lot of the people who traveled that far to England and had been coming there for a long period of time to trade and to port there as they were traveling other places where maybe they could actually trade in the area. And Ireland, the Irisk and stuff, a lot of them would still trade with them anyhow. But anyway, the whole thing is there was kind of a conflict going on between the Christians and the heathens at the time. It all started way back with the Saxons in Saxony, not in Anglo-Saxon England, earlier period. about 10 years before Lindisfarne, Charlemagne had put like 4,500 people to death because one of the Saxon kings had attacked a garrison of his and wiped out his garrison. Almost wiped out his entire garrison. He retaliated by putting 4,500 of the people that weren't warriors to death. The king got away and ran to Denmark. So I still believe this could be, I could be wrong, but 10 years is not a very long time for people to decide that raiding Lindisfarne is a good idea as in retaliation. That's about how long it would take for them to realize that they couldn't make port places, they were being attacked by soldiers, they were being shunned by the people, they were told that they could not aid them because they didn't want to be put to death. So that's about how long it would take before they might start retaliating against the church. So then putting some kind of thing where it's Templars against the Assassins, the Brotherhood of Assassins, totally makes sense to me. I don't have a problem with it. It weaves right into the story, but I just don't know where the Templars came from. I hope you've enjoyed our review. I enjoyed making the review, talking about it a little bit. If I didn't cover something, I'm sure you can probably go by and watch Shad's. I think he's done way over an hour-long video of this and covered probably things I didn't even cover. But I've enjoyed the video. Thanks to Marquez for recommending me doing it, Brad Lynn for supporting me in doing it, and giving me an idea to come out and actually don the stuff that would be worn, if you were going to be in the right Viking age, the armor and so on, and proper weaponry, such as a sword that he probably would use, I think. But anyway, as always, I hope you enjoyed our video. Like and subscribe, and farewell.
If you'd like to help support the channel, you can always sport a Thegn Thrand YouTube channel shirt that you can get over at viralstyle.com at the Thegn Thrand merchandise store. We have coffee mugs, koozies, a wide variety of shirts and hats. You can also help support us on Patreon, and if you do that, you'll also get exclusive content that can only be seen there.